This is Scott the Fix It Guy. Today we have a Frigidaire dryer that is tearing the clothes up during the drying cycle, and it's due to a part called the front bearing that's worn out. So we're going to be removing the dryer from the washing machine by taking out these two Phillips head screws. I've lifted up the machine a little bit, and now I'm removing two more screws from the bottom, and they're part of what's holding on the front panel. I need to, near the middle of the video, be able to remove the front panel, so I have to get these two screws off. Now I'm pulling the whole dryer toward me, and I have put a chair with a bucket on top to support the weight of the dryer as I get it forward. Make sure you have something pretty secure that's going to hold up the weight of the dryer as you bring it towards you. The reason I need to bring it toward me is I have to take two screws off of the back that are holding on the top plate. And I have to get off the top plate so that I can actually remove the front panel. Kind of funny how they design these, but you've got to remove the top panel first. And the top panel is held on by two Phillips head screws in the back. So I got it out pretty far now from the cabinet, and I've got it supported again by a pretty strong chair with a kind of a bucket on top of it. And now I'm going to reach back there with my angle tool, and I'm going to use a Phillips head screwdriver to remove the Phillips head screw here on the right side that's about 5 inches in from the outside edge. And then there's one on the left side in the same proximity. So again, unfortunately, you have to get the machine out away from, in this case, the wall, because it had a shelf on top. So I've got those two screws out, and I'm going to push the whole top away from me by about an inch, and then I can lift the top off. I'm using a standard head screwdriver to help pry the top panel off. Lift that off, get it out of the way. Now I'm separating these two modular connectors that are bringing power to the front panel. And I'm going to cut a zip tie that's holding on some of those wires. And then I've got to remove 4 screws from the top. There's 2 shiny metal screws here on the right hand side at the top and 2 on the left hand side. But there's also 2 black Phillips head screws that are holding on the front panel that are about 5 inches down from the top on the right hand side and 5 inches down on the left hand side. I was just showing you how the tumbler is kind of loose. You can lift it up and there's a lot of play. And that's the reason that the clothes are getting ripped, is the top bearing, which is made of felt, has worn out and it's creating too much of a gap. And then clothes get caught in the gap, and that's what tears them up. Sometimes it creates like a brown burn mark, or it'll actually rip the clothing. But it's easy to fix. We just have to replace that felt piece called the front bearing. And once I get the screws off, what I'll do is I'll lift this top panel off. There's also 2 Phillips head screws at the bottom of the front panel that we've got to zip off. So I'm just getting the ones off the top on the left-hand side. To get me up high enough, I'm standing on a stool too. I'm pretty tall, 6'4", but I needed to stand on something to get me up high enough. So I'm removing the screws from the bottom of the front panel on the right and left. And remember, at the top, on the top of the top panel, about 5 inches down on the inside, there is a Phillips head screw. So there's a lot of screws to get the front panel off. There's 2 here at the bottom, there's 4 at the top, and then there's 2 more that are about 5 inches down from the top. So now I'm going to try to separate the front panel from the frame, and there's a couple of clips that are holding it on, so I'll use a standard head screwdriver to give me a little bit of leverage to pop it loose. There we go. And the front bearing actually is part of the front panel, so that's why you have to get it off. So we're going to go ahead and set that down. There we go. So now we're going to need to strip off this old felt panel because it's all worn out. It's just not creating enough of a gap anymore, or it's actually creating too much of a gap because it's been reduced too far. So we're going to pull off the old one. I like to use a paint scraper to help me to get it off. There's some contact cement glue that the factory puts on that we have to try to get off as much as we can so that the new one will stick on really well. So I'm peeling off the old one, using my paint scraper now to try to scrape away some of the old felt and some of the old glue. And then I like to use also a wire brush to clean up even more of the felt and glue. It doesn't have to be perfectly clean, but the more stuff you can remove, the better the new one will connect. Contact cement's interesting because what you need to do is apply some to both the surface on the front panel and some to the felt, and then you let it sit for about 5 minutes to 10 minutes until it's tacky, and then you connect the two together. So I'm just cleaning that up the best I can. For this machine, when you get the new front bearing, the felt piece, pretty cheap, but it doesn't come with contact cement, so you have to buy the high temperature contact cement separately. Pretty cheap. You can get it at appliance parts stores. And just once it's clean, you're going to put some on this metal surface and then some on the felt bearing, and then you just got to wait for about 5 to 10 minutes. You can touch it, and if it feels tacky, not wet anymore, but kind of sticky, then it's ready for the two to be joined. So again, we're just making sure that we got as much of that felt off as possible. I noticed that this felt piece too that is part of the ducting to the blower housing was coming loose, so I used some contact cement on that. I let it get tacky, and then I'm pushing the felt piece into position. If that felt piece has come loose, it'd be good to repair it while you're at it. You may notice some of the other felt that surrounds the, it's a little bit lower than the front bearing, could be loose, and it'd be a good time to glue it while you're doing this repair. So again, just making sure that that piece of felt on the lower part of the filter housing is nice and secure and complete. Here's the front bearing, the felt piece that's been sitting with the glue on it, and it's about 5 or 10 minutes has gone by and it's nice and tacky. So we're going to go ahead and apply that now to the metal part of the front panel. And to do that, we're going to push it into position and then press down. And you want to add pressure for about 2 or 3 minutes to make sure that it's on there really tight. You want to bring it as close as you can to the back part of the front bearing, closest toward the camera right now, so that it's in there tight and secure. Press it down strong with your hand and thumbs. And then we want to let it sit for another 10 minutes would be ideal before we install the front panel. Once you put the dryer together, they recommend not using it for maybe 12 hours so the glue really sets strong, and then you can go ahead and use the dryer. So it's on there nice and tight. We've let it dry. We got everything in position. We're going to put the front panel back on. We're going to lift it up and get it all lined up. And take your time here. One thing you want to make sure you do is lift up the tumbler so that it sits on this new front bearing as you're putting the front panel on. Once the front panel is where you want it, if you push in, it'll engage the clips, and the two metal clips will help hold it into position until you add the screws again. So I'm going to lift up on the tumbler, get it to sit up on top of the front bearing, and really push in, get everything to lock into position. There we go. We'll add these screws now. The ones on the top are the shiny silver ones. There's two on the right, two on the left. Sometimes the holes don't line up as well as you want them to, and what I like to use is a tool called an owl, which is kind of like a sharp pointed tool to help line up the holes, and then I can put the screw in. It works pretty good. So now we're using that pointy tool to line up the holes. Now we can get that screw to line up. Putting those screws in at the bottom to hold on the front panel. Another thing you could put your dryer on that's usually about the right height is a recycling bin from out in front of the house, or garbage can is about the right size, and they're pretty strong to hold up the weight of the dryer. So we got everything in position. I pushed the dryer back in over the washing machine. I'm going to add this lower panel, push that up into position, and I'll add the two Phillips head screws that hold in the bottom panel. So I'm going to put those in, and then I'll set the dryer back down into the feet of the dryer into the washing machine, and I'll add the two Phillips head screws that lock the dryer to the washer. And no more ripped or burned clothes. This is probably something that needs to be done at about 8 years of use. If you find your Phillips head screwdrivers kind of skipping around on these screws, you can try the type that is actually more like a small square. That sometimes fits better into these Frigidaire Phillips head screws. Add that one in. And we are done. Hopefully this will help you out too, so you don't have any more burned or ripped clothes with your dryer. Thanks so much for watching, and please subscribe when you get a chance.